They laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was easier than facing the truth. In a world where embarrassment feels like execution, where one mistake becomes a headline, where the crowd feeds on your fear, most people shrink. But legends, they rise. Because humiliation isn't the end, it's the forge. Pressure doesn't destroy you, it reveals you. When the entire town is dying of embarrassment and the spotlight burns your skin, you have a choice. Break or become unbreakable.
This is woe!
Is die of embarrassment, and this is mind over madness. Embarrassment is temporary. Strength is permanent. They don't tell you that when the spotlight hits. They don't tell you that when your mistake echoes through the room, when the laughter spreads like wildfire, when your name becomes a whisper wrapped in mockery. In that moment, it feels eternal. It feels like the walls are closing in, like the ground has opened beneath your feet and decided you are not worthy to stand on it. Embarrassment feels like death, but it isn't. It's a test, a psychological battlefield where your mind decides whether this moment becomes your grave or your origin story. See, most people run. They shrink. They replay the scene 1,000 times in their heads, dissecting every word, every movement, every flaw. They let the noise invade their thoughts until it becomes their identity. I am the mistake. I am the humiliation. And slowly they hand their power to the crowd. But strength is born in that exact moment. Not when you're applauded. Not when you're comfortable. Not when you're safe. Strength is forged when you refuse to collapse under the weight of judgment. Embarrassment is a spark. It burns hot, violent, and fast. It scorches your ego. It exposes your insecurities. It strips away the illusion of control. But here's the truth they never warn you about. The fire doesn't last forever. The mind does. And if you master it, you turn that fire into fuel. You stand in the center of the chaos. You feel the sting. You let the laughter ring in your ears. And instead of breaking, you observe. You detach. You say to yourself, this moment does not define me. My reaction does. That's where transformation begins. Mental dominance is not about avoiding pain. It's about walking straight through it with your head high and your heartbeat steady. It's about understanding that humiliation is temporary, but the resilience you build from surviving it becomes permanent armor. Every legend has a moment they wish no one saw. A fall. A failure. A public crack in their perfect image. But what separates the weak from the unstoppable is simple. They didn't let that moment own them. They owned it. They turned shame into strategy. They turned chaos into clarity. They turned embarrassment into evolution. Because once you survive being laughed at, once you survive being judged, once you survive being exposed, you become fearless. And a fearless mind is dangerous. When you realize that the worst has already happened, and you're still standing, still breathing, still capable, you unlock something unbreakable. You stop living for approval. You stop shrinking to fit expectations. You stop apologizing for existing loudly. Embarrassment fades. The crowd moves on. The whispers die. But the strength you build in that storm, it stays, it hardens. It sharpens your focus and steels your spine. So let them laugh, let them watch. Let the town drown in its own noise. Because when the echo fades and the lights dim, you won't be remembered for the moment you fell. You'll be remembered for the moment you rose. Untouchable, unshaken, unstoppable. Embarrassment is temporary. Strength is permanent. Pressure reveals your true mindset. Not when everything is calm. Not when the lights are soft and the world is quiet. Pressure doesn't show up in comfort. It arrives like a storm. It squeezes your lungs. It tightens your chest. It whispers, "You're not ready." And that's when the mask cracks. See, anyone can look confident when nothing is at stake. Anyone can speak about courage when the risk is small. But when the clock is ticking, when the crowd is watching, when failure feels inches away, that's when the truth steps forward. Pressure is the great revealer. It exposes the stories you've been telling yourself in the dark. I can't handle this. I'm not built for this. I'm going to break. Or, I was made for this. I've survived worse. This is where I rise. The difference isn't talent. It isn't luck. It's mindset. Pressure doesn't create weakness. It exposes it. It doesn't create strength either. It reveals whether you've built it. When chaos erupts, your nervous system goes to war. Your heart pounds like a drum in a battlefield. Your thoughts scattered. And in that split second, you have a decision to make. Surrender to panic or seize control. Mental dominance begins there. It begins when you recognize the fear but refuse to bow to it. When you feel the heat, but don't let it consume you. When you understand that pressure is not your enemy. It's your proving ground. Diamonds are not formed in silence. Steel is not forged in comfort. Legends are not born in ease. They are born in compression, in tension. In moments where the world seems to lean on their shoulders and dare them to crumble. Most people collapse under pressure because they see it as punishment. But the elite, they see it as privilege. Pressure means it matters. Pressure means you're close. Pressure means the moment is big enough to change you, and change is violent. It tears apart the weaker version of you. It forces you to confront every insecurity, every doubt, every excuse you've been hiding behind. Under pressure, you can't pretend. You can't fake discipline. You can't borrow confidence. You either stand or you fold. But here's the secret no one tells you. Pressure is temporary. The growth it triggers is permanent. Every time you endure it without breaking, your threshold expands. What once felt unbearable becomes manageable. What once terrified you becomes routine. You begin to crave the intensity, to step toward the heat instead of away from it. Because now you understand. Pressure isn't here to destroy you. It's here to introduce you to yourself, to show you the warrior beneath the doubt, to uncover the resilience buried under fear, to transform panic into precision. When the stakes are high and the world feels heavy, that is your moment. Not to shrink, not to escape, but to breathe deep, steady your mind, and say, this is where I prove who I am. Pressure doesn't define you. It reveals you. And when you train your mind to remain calm in the storm, when you learn to stand steady while everything shakes, you don't just survive pressure. You become unstoppable because of it. Fear is fuel, not failure. You feel it before you see it. That cold rush through your veins, that tightening in your stomach, that voice in your head whispering, don't do it. A fear has a sound. It's subtle, persistent. It disguises itself as logic, as protection, as safety. It tells you to stay small, stay quiet, stay invisible. And most people obey. They mistake fear for a stop sign. They treat it like a verdict. They believe if they're afraid, it must mean they're not capable. But fear isn't proof of weakness. It's proof that something matters. Your body doesn't react like that for ordinary moments. It doesn't shake for average opportunities. Fear shows up when you're standing at the edge of growth, when you're about to step beyond the limits of who you used to be. And that edge is terrifying, because on the other side of fear, there is no guarantee, no applause waiting, no certainty. Just risk, just exposure, just the possibility of falling flat in front of everyone. That's why most people retreat. But the powerful, they lean in. They understand something the crowd doesn't. Fear is energy, raw, intense, volatile. It floods your system with adrenaline, sharpens your senses, forces you into the present moment. It's not there to stop you. It's there to prepare you. The problem isn't fear. The problem is interpretation. If you see fear as failure, you freeze. You hesitate. You shrink. You tell yourself, I'm not ready. And slowly, you build a prison made of avoided risks and postponed dreams. But if you see fear as fuel, everything changes. Now that pounding heart becomes a war drum. That shaky breath becomes a reminder you're alive. That tension becomes ignition. Fear is a signal that you're stepping into something bigger than your comfort zone, and growth has never been comfortable. Evolution has never been gentle. Transformation is violent. It rips apart the version of you that clings to safety and demands you build something stronger in its place. You don't eliminate fear to become fearless. You move with it. You let it ride in the passenger seat, but you never let it touch the wheel. Mental dominance is not the absence of fear. It's command over it. It's looking at the doubt in your mind and saying, you can speak, but you don't decide. It's walking onto the stage with your pulse racing and performing anyway. It's launching the idea, taking the shot, making the move, while your hands are still trembling. Because courage is not calm. Courage is action in the presence of fear. Every breakthrough you admire was born in a moment of terror. Every leader you respect once stood shaking before they stood strong. The difference is they refused to let fear become their identity. They used it. They burned it. They turned it into propulsion. So the next time fear grips you, don't retreat. Don't apologize for it. Don't interpret it as weakness. Smile. Because fear just revealed the doorway to your next level. Step forward. Let it surge through you. Let it sharpen you. And when the world expects you to back down, take one more step. Fear is not your enemy. It's the fire. And you were built to burn brighter because of it. The crowd's laughter doesn't define you. It echoes, it spreads. It multiplies in the dark corners of your mind long after the moment has passed. Laughter can feel like a weapon, sharp, public, merciless. It crawls under your skin and sets up a home inside your thoughts. You replay it over and over, the smirks, the whispers, the sideways glances, and suddenly, it's not just sound anymore. It becomes a verdict. They think I'm a joke. They don't respect me. I'll never recover from this. That's how identity gets hijacked. Not by failure, not by defeat, but by interpretation. The crowd laughs, and you decide what it means. Most people let it mean everything. They shrink their ambition. They lower their voice. They trade authenticity for approval. They start performing for acceptance instead of striving for greatness. Slowly, they mold themselves into something safer, quieter, less threatening. And in the process, they disappear. But here's the truth: the crowd has always laughed. They laughed at dreamers. They laughed at innovators. They laughed at anyone bold enough to stand alone before they stood admired. Laughter is easy. It costs nothing. It requires no courage. It's the reflex of the insecure, the shield of the average, the soundtrack of the comfortable watching someone else take a risk. And you took the risk. You stepped forward. You exposed yourself to judgment. You dared to act while others hid behind commentary. That alone separates you. Mental dominance begins when you detach from the noise. When you understand that the crowd's reaction is a reflection of them, not a measurement of you. Their laughter is filtered through their fears, their limitations, their small understanding of what's possible. You cannot let limited minds define an unlimited future. Yes, it stings. You're human. The nervous system reacts. The ego flares. But strength is not pretending you don't feel it. Strength is feeling it and refusing to surrender to it. You stand there, heart pounding, heat rising to your face, and instead of shrinking, you breathe. You remind yourself, their opinion is not my destiny, because the same crowd that laughs today will cheer tomorrow if you refuse to quit. And even if they never cheer, it doesn't matter. Your mission was never to entertain them. It was to evolve yourself. Transformation demands thick skin. If you need applause to move forward, you will always be controlled by silence. If you fear laughter, you will never attempt greatness. But once you accept that judgment is the price of ambition, you become untouchable. Let them laugh. Let them doubt. Let them underestimate. While they're entertained by noise, you're building resilience. While they're reacting, you're refining. While they're comfortable in the audience, you're sharpening yourself in the arena. The crowd's laughter fades. It always does. But the courage it took for you to stand there, exposed and unbroken, that stays. And when history looks back, it won't remember the sound of their laughter. It will remember the moment you refused to bow to it. Master your mind, master the moment. Everything begins there. Not in the applause. Not in the outcome. Not in the victory speech at the end. It begins in the silent war inside your head. The moment before you act. The second before you speak. The breath before you decide. That's where battles are won or lost. Because the world doesn't control you. Circumstances don't control you. Chaos doesn't control you. What controls you is the meaning you assign to what's happening. And most people never realize they're prisoners of their own thoughts. A setback happens. They call it failure. A rejection comes. They call it proof they're not enough. A mistake explodes in public. They call it the end. But those are interpretations, not truths. The untrained mind reacts. It panics. It spirals. It amplifies fear until a small problem feels catastrophic. It turns moments into monsters. And once the mind loses control, the body follows. Confidence collapses. Posture weakens. Decisions shrink. But when you master your mind, everything shifts. You become the observer, not the victim. You step back and say, "This is just a moment. It does not own me." You separate emotion from identity. You feel the chaos, but you do not drown in it. That is power. Mental mastery is not about being emotionless. It's about being disciplined. It's about choosing your response when every impulse screams at you to react. It's about slowing down time in your own head while the world moves at full speed. In the middle of pressure, you breathe. In the middle of embarrassment, you stand tall. In the middle of fear, you move forward anyway. Because you understand something dangerous. The moment is neutral. It has no meaning until you assign it one. And when you train your mind, you choose meanings that strengthen you. Pain becomes growth. Failure becomes feedback. Chaos becomes opportunity. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" And start asking, "How can this sharpen me?" That shift alone separates the ordinary from the unstoppable. When you master your mind, you don't wait for perfect conditions. You create internal stability regardless of external storms. The noise can roar. The crowd can judge. The pressure can rise like a tidal wave. But inside, there is focus. There is clarity. There is control. And control over your inner world gives you dominance over the outer one. Because moments don't last. They pass. But who you become in those moments, that stays. Every test is a doorway. Every crisis is a mirror. It shows you who you are when stripped of comfort. And when your mind is trained. When your thoughts are disciplined. When your identity is built on resilience instead of approval. No moment can break you. It can only reveal you. Master your thoughts, and you master your emotions. Master your emotions, and you master your actions. Master your actions, and you master your destiny. The world may be chaotic, but your mind, that's your kingdom. And when you rule it without fear, you rule everything that follows.